On October 30th, the Halifax Thunderbirds will return to the nest for the first lacrosse action since March of 2020. And they will not be playing the same opponent, though they will take them on in the season opener on December 4th. That is the Saskatchewan Rush. But instead, they will be playing one another. And this game is starting to pick up some attraction. Everyone's excited to get back in the arena, and the boys have a lot to prove on the floor. I've got Pat Gregoire, our analyst, and Mike Accursi, head coach of the Thunderbirds here. Gentlemen, welcome to what we're calling the draft. And here's what's going to happen tonight. We are going to find out who Graeme Hossack has taken for Team Purple and Cody Jamieson has taken for Team Orange on the defensive end of things. And we're going to break things down like this. It's going to go from the left side of the floor to the right side of the floor. And we're going to unveil these picks as though it was like a pack of lacrosse cards being opened, and then I will gather your reaction. So if you boys are ready to go, we'll get this thing started.
Let's do it.
Scott Campbell, Ethanriggs, Trevor Smith, Brookeramirez, and of course, Graeme Hossack himself. Pat, let's start with Soupy Campbell. I don't know, soup goes bad pretty quickly, but this can keeps getting better with age. What can you tell me about Scott Campbell?
Yeah, his nickname may be Soupy, but this guy ages like a fine wine. He gets better and better as his career has progressed, and he's a leader on and off the floor. He's a heartbeat soul of this team, and when you break it down, he's one of the best defenders on this team. So it's going to be interesting to see some of these older guys, how they react after 1.5 seasons off. But he's in such phenomenal shape, and he's such a fierce competitor. I know he's been keeping his tool sharp, and we're going to see that same old feisty Soupy. Even though he's playing his own teammates, he's going to come with a hard edge.
Yeah, we asked Soupy what his goals were for the season. He said nothing short of a championship. The team was so close before COVID shut things down, but this season in a great position to get back after it. And he is a player that's getting up there with age, so I'm sure a championship would be that much sweeter for him. Mike, just what is Soupy like in the dressing room? What can you tell me about his leadership ability?
Well, he's a consummate professional, and he leads by example. He's one of the first guys out for warm-ups, one of the last guys to leave. He's always in phenomenal shape. I was up in Toronto last week for the fitness testing, and he actually beat Graeme Hossack in the push-up competition. So I expect nothing but great things again from Scott, and I lean on him a lot for his leadership and his character, and he's a guy that's irreplaceable in the locker room.
Next, we're moving down the list. It is Ethanriggs, picked a couple of years ago I guess it was just last year. It seems like so much longer, but we've been waiting to see this young player suit up for the Thunderbirds, and a lot of excitement surrounding him. Just a big body. He's got a great energy to him, even, speaking on camera with him. I think there are some high hopes surrounding him, like I said, but Pat, what can you tell me about Ethanriggs?
Yeah, the big rig has been sitting in the garage waiting to hit the ground running. And luckily for him, he's one of the few players that actually had the opportunity to play this summer. He's a junior A eligible player still. So still a youngster, so much promise. But this is a guy that's an absolute bruiser. He throws guys to the turf, but he's also find some tune parts of his game, much better on loose balls, can move the ball consistently up the floor. And if he does want to be a National Lacrosse League player, he's going to have to be a well-rounded player. And I think that's one thing that he really has taken to heart this offseason. He's a guy that is not only has a chance to be an impact player this year, but he's going to be a cornerstone piece for this defense going forward.
Mike, what are you hoping to see from Riggsy in the purple versus orange game?
Again, I think, Pat kind of hit the nail on the head. He's an intensity. He's a grit, sandpaper kind of guy who plays tough. He's a big body, throws guys around. I just want to see that continued intensity and that continued growth for him. And again, Pat said the kid has so much potential, and I think he really could be a cornerstone for our defense for years to come.
As we move down the list, and once again, this is coming in no particular order, but Trevor Smith up next. And I spoke with Graeme Hossack. He said what he was kind of hoping to accomplish on the back end was just get a lot of size and beat up Team Orange. So what is Trevor Smith going to do on the back end?
Sorry, yeah, Trevor Smith, he's the guy that I thought I mentioned guys getting better and better every time they step on the floor. That's a guy that I see that he does have some sandpaper to his game. But one thing I really like about him is his lacrosse IQ. He tracks down balls really well. He's never really in bad position. Some games you won't even notice him. And then you watch the film back and you see all these things. And that's not a bad thing. That's actually a good thing from a defender because he's just so sound and calm back there. He's a calming presence. But like Graeme said, big body as well. Not quite as big as maybe the last couple guys we talked about, but still a very athletic defender and a guy that, again, a lot of promise going forward. I thought he had a tremendous first season with Halifax.
Yeah, Mike, what did you see from him in year one, and what might he need to improve on to become a contributing member on the Thunderbirds in years to come?
Yeah, I think that, sometimes the best defender is the one that you don't talk about, and I think he's that guy. He doesn't make a lot of mistakes. He's very cerebral in his approach to the game. He watches a lot of film. He pushes the ball really well. I don't think guys give him credit for that, but he's really good at moving that ball up the floor and making good decisions in transition. And, he's got lots of speed and size. So, again, he's just going to continue that growth that he had from last year. And, again, talk about another corner piece for our defense for a long time. Trevor Smith is that kid.
Now, Brookeramirez, kind of a newcomer to the Halifax Thunderbirds, played a little bit with the New York Riptide. He's on the back end. This guy's got quite the background. Hockey player, also an actor, but he's looking for a spot with these Thunderbirds. Pat, what are you hoping to see from him in the purple versus orange game?
I'm starting to think that maybe Graeme Hossack just drafted guys that he wants to work out with because he has some freak athletes back on his back end there. And Brookeramirez is the exact same thing. Very physical player. He can really move the ball up the floor as well. Like you said, a cup of coffee with a couple of different teams in the National Lacrosse League. But as the league grows with expansion, Brookeramirez is the perfect guy that is going to find his way onto one of these rosters. Is it going to be this time? He's going to have to impress because this defense here is not only elite, but from top to bottom, and even guys that are within the system, there is so much depth. But this is a guy that has so much potential. He's going to get his opportunity, and I think if he plays within his own game, like I said, being physical, jumping up in the offense, taking those chances when you can, I think he's going to have a real shot to be in the mix to make this team.
Okay, Mike, let's play this game. If Brookeramirez does blank, he will make the opening night roster.
I don't know. That's a tough one. I've known Brooker for a long time. I coached him in Junior A when I was coaching the St. Gallen's Junior A team, and he is a heart and soul kind of guy. So for me, it's all about effort and doing the extra things. He's a very good defender. Like you said, I don't think he's necessarily got the opportunity to play. There's no better showcase than to showcase in front of the fans in Halifax. So I think he needs to impress. He needs to have a good, solid game. He needs to push the ball smart in transition. But continue with that effort because he is a 100 guy. He goes 100% of the time.
Well, we are going to move on. This is Cody Jamieson's picks. Let's open up this pack of cards, shall we? So on the left-hand side, on defense, we got Nungo Thompson as number one. So, Pat, I think there's a lot of excitement surrounding Thompson. He came onto the scene, lots of people talking about him with the Halifax Thunderbirds. He had a great season in the Ontario Junior Lacrosse League as well. You had some front row seats to watch him play, had a couple of words with him. Seems to be kind of maturing as a player as well. Is that safe to say?
Absolutely. He really is coming into his own game. And that's one thing that I noticed. I got a good look at him a few seasons ago when he was playing for Akwesasne Junior B. And this guy, to see where he's come from then to now, it's quite remarkable. He had an unbelievable summer. You mentioned the Junior A, but he also played some major series lacrosse as well with Six Nations. And he was one of the best defenders night in and night out whenever the Chiefs played. And he's added a different element to his game, getting involved in the offense, running in transition, taking those shots, but also being smart, not just being a run and gun player, taking to the net every time. He understands the game and is learning the game, when to pressure, when to pull out, when to get it to your offense. And I think this is a guy that Halifax Thunderbirds fans should be excited for. He's going to be a completely different defender that you saw last season. Although he is a very solid depth piece, this is a guy, I've used the word cornerstone quite a bit, but this is definitely a guy that could become a cornerstone piece on this defense.
Yeah, Mike, you got the chance to see Nungo in the dressing room, learning from other players, maybe seeing some of that maturity kind of develop. What were you able to see as you had front row seats in the locker room?
Again, I think he was a sponge last year, and I think you got guys like Soupy and Haas on that left side to learn from. Mags and Gillis on the other side. I think he was very much a sponge. He was very quiet last year. Again, he put his effort in to make this team, and that's what for me was big. I mean, I saw him in the combines, and guys are talking about him, but nobody was really expecting too much of him. And then he came in the National Lacrosse League and made a big splash and made a name for himself. He's a gritty, tough defender. Again, I think that maturity level is continuing to rise for him. He's a young guy and he's only going to get better. I mean, for me, the one thing I'm looking from him is, it's hard to tell a guy to crank up the intensity. It's a little bit easier to crank it back. So for him, his intensity sometimes got the best of him. I think he led our team in minor penalties last year. So, we got to pare that back, make some decisions a little bit smarter. But again, that's a maturity process, and having guys like Super Boss help him along is definitely going to help him.
We're moving on to another newcomer on this team. Not that Nungo was, but Tyson Bell was acquired just last year during the 2020 NLL entry draft. Kind of shocked a lot of people, but seems to be a great fit for this Halifax Thunderbirds team. He can push the ball up in transition. He's got that championship experience, and Cody Jamieson has taken him on his back end. So, Pat, what are you hoping to see from Tyson Bell this coming season? Had some experience at the Premier Lacrosse League level as well, so he's going to be coming in a great shape.
Yeah, Cody Jamieson is a smart guy. He took Tyson Bell because he does not want to play Tyson Bell anymore. He's now on his team. He's taken him. He's drafted him because this is a guy that you absolutely hate to play against. He gets under your skin. He's annoying to play against. He'll also get in the rush, score goals in transition, dominate loose balls. He'll chirp you, and that's why you don't like playing against him. But when he's on your team, you absolutely love him. A great big team guy, character guy as well. And I think this is an element that Halifax's defensive core was really missing last year. Yes, a lot of tremendous athletes that can move the ball up the floor and get it to safe space, but they were missing that scoring element. I think that's something that Tyson Bell will bring, while also having that, lunch pail, a hard hat attitude as well to his game. And I think Cody Jamieson did a great job by grabbing him, and now he knows, okay, I don't have to worry about getting hacked and whacked by Tyson Bell.
Mike, let's go back to draft night back in September of 2020. You're sitting there. Kurt Stiers is working the phones as he does on draft day. It's pretty fun to watch, but he goes through it and pulls off this trade to acquire Tyson Bell. As a head coach, what's running through your mind?
I was excited. I mean, I've watched Tyson play for a long time, and I've always liked the way that he plays, and I like that intensity and that sandpaper that he brings. And Pat hit the nail on the head. Guys love to play with him, but hate playing against him. And he's a great team guy. He's great in the locker room. He's fun. If you follow him on Instagram, the guy does all kinds of crazy fun stuff. But he is a real good stud athlete and a guy that is very smart in transition. Will get us 7-8 goals in transition, and that only helps our offense. So, he's a great defender, but I am looking for him to score a couple goals for us this year.
And we're moving on. It's Corey Becker, who appeared in a couple of games for the Halifax Thunderbirds last season. A young player as well, trying to kind of find his way onto the roster full time. Pat, what can you tell me about Corey?
Again, similar to Muir, a guy that, I thought last year had a couple of very strong games to start the season. But when you have such strong depth, other guys get opportunities. And unfortunately for Corey Becker, wasn't able to get into more than just 4 games. But when you did see him, you saw the potential was there. And it's the athleticism that really jumps off the page for me. He scored a beautiful goal as well. I think this is a guy that, Coach Mike Accursi just said, there's these guys that are sponges, and I think that's what he is, and I think that he's only going to have to learn how to play at the high levels, but the tools are there. There's no doubt that he certainly can be a National Lacrosse League player at the everyday level.
Yeah, Mike, on the back end, what are you hoping to see from Corey in the purple versus orange game in order to work towards that full-time roster spot?
I mean, Corey's super fast. He's probably our fastest guy on our team by far. Phenomenal shape. I think sometimes his legs get ahead of his brain. So, it's putting those, two pieces together, I think, which is going to be important. But you also have to remember, Corey Becker only played Junior B, played Senior B, played Can-Am. He never played at that Senior A, Junior A level. So him making the step from that level to making a professional team last year was a huge accomplishment for him. And again, he's one of those guys that's great in the locker room, works hard every single practice, wants to learn, wants to get better. So he's only going to get better. Like you said, he has the physical tools. Now it's getting the experience and the lacrosse IQ caught up with the physicality that he brings to the game every night.
Well, we talk about the players that are hoping to get better, to improve. And when we kind of polled the players and asked them their goals for the upcoming season, this next player had this to say. He wants to win comeback player of the year, and that's Luke VanSheppard. So he's coming off of an injury that kept him out. He appeared in the Purple versus Orange game a couple of years ago. Now he's got the chance to come back to play in front of the Thunderbirds faithful. Pat, what do you expect to see from him?
Compete. That's what I think he needs to do, and I think that's what he's going to do. And that's the motivation right there. That I'm sure, this coaching staff, I know Mike loves to hear something like that, but how could you not? And this is a guy that you could tell it ate away at him, not being able to be on the floor in the first season with Halifax, being with this group of guys on the floor, competing for eventually, which was going to be a championship run, in my personal opinion. But he's going to get the opportunity now. And I think that if he does the things that he did leading up to making this team before he was injured, there's no reason why he can't be in the mix for an everyday spot here. I really like his game. It's been a while since we've seen him, but he's a very smart player, and I'm looking forward to seeing the comeback for him as well.
Yeah, Mike, sometimes we see with those players who are coming back from injury, they come out that much more hungry. Do you expect that from VanSheppard on the back end?
I do. I mean, Luca got injured in the Purple and Orange game last year. He blew his ACL and had surgery. But again, the character of the guy, just so that you all know, he came to every practice last year. Guys were doing runs. He started doing push-ups. He couldn't be a part of that part of the practice, but he wanted to make sure that guys knew that he was committed to the team. So how can you not like a guy like that? But I think Pat hit it on the head. He's going to have to compete. He's going to have to work hard. But again, great character guy, great effort guy. I want to see him come back. I want to see him come back stronger and better than he did, last time around. He lost 25 pounds and put on all muscle. He's a fireman now. So, he's put a real effort into his fitness and being ready to compete in camp. So I'm excited to see him back on the floor.
Okay, Team Purple defense, the righties. This has a pretty star-studded cast. Let's just say that. One of the players that we are certainly most excited to watch this coming season because of what he was able to do in the Premier Lacrosse League, what he did in his collegiate career. We're going to get started with Ryan Tarafenko. Pat, I mean, does he need any introduction? What are you hoping to see from him? How is he going to adjust to that box game?
That's the big question. How quickly can he adjust to the box game? Because we know physically he's there. We've seen the stick skills. We've seen what he's been able to do, whether it's down at the Ohio State University or it's with the PLL. But what he's going to be able to do inside the box, that's the big question. I think he's going to be able to translate because he is just such a special player and such a special athlete. We saw him grow as a player in the outdoor game at the professional ranks as it went on. So I don't think he's going to hit the ground running right away and be an absolute stud right away. He's going to have some growing pains. But with that being said, he also has potential to be the Rookie of the Year or a Defender of the Year down the road. I'm really excited to what we can see here. And I think the veterans here are going to play a big role into kind of teaching him on the run how to play this indoor game. But I think there's no reason why, with all his athletic ability, all his talent that he has, and the big thing too is the desire to want to be not only just a box lacrosse player, but an elite box lacrosse player. I think he really, really wants to do that.
Mike, it's opening night. Let's say Ryan Tarafenko makes that opening night roster. What are you saying to him in the dressing room before he steps on that floor?
Well, I think he's played in a lot of big games, so I don't think, it would be any different. I mean, he's played in front of big fans at Ohio State and the PLL, but I think for me, it would just be just do what you're good at. Stay within yourself. Don't try and extend yourself too much. Just stick to the basics, right? Mean potato kind of defense. He's a great shutdown defender. Again, he can take face-offs. He can, push transition. But just let the game come to you. And I think that's the thing. You can't force the game to come to you. You can't force yourself to be comfortable. You just have to go in there, dive in, be confident in your abilities, and let the game happen. And then use the knowledge that you have and the IQ that you have to build off of that.
Well, let's continue down the list. A newcomer as well, and we hope to see him last year. Obviously, the season didn't happen, but David Brock, another year older, and that's not necessarily a bad thing because he is one of those players that seems to get better with age. He's coming over from the Toronto Rock. We've seen quite a bit of him over the years with the New England Black Wolves, the Buffalo Bandits. He spent lots of time in the East, now suiting up with the Halifax Thunderbirds. Pat, what are you hoping to see from the Brockett ship this season?
Yeah, David Brock, he's a guy that he's just so much fun to watch. And you said it the best there. He gets better and better as he gets older. Very similar. We talked about Soupy, same thing as well. And I think one thing that he has added to his game is a little more of an offensive touch. Last season, I should say, not so much with the Toronto Rock, but the season previous before that with the New England Black Wolves, he shattered so many of his offensive totals. And I think he has the capability to do that, but I don't think he is going to be relied on to be a top transition player of the year. What he needs to do is be a strong shutdown defender, be a leader, be a vocal voice in that locker room, even though it's his first year with the team, very familiar with a lot of guys on this team. And he's a guy that when you look at previous championships, you need guys like David Brock. And that's what Kurt Stiers and Mike Accursi, what they did. They went out and they grabbed a guy that they know that if you're going to be a championship team, you need a guy like this in your lineup, veteran, grit, and a guy that when he gets the opportunity, can put the ball in the back of the net as well.
Mike, David Brock, a former teammate of defensive coach Billy D. Smith's in Buffalo. This has got to be an exciting dynamic to kind of watch unfold this season.
Yeah, I think they obviously play together, so they're familiar with each other and familiar with what their strengths and weaknesses are. So I think they'll bring the best out of each other. I know, I was excited to get David here. We tried really hard when we first came to Halifax to get him to sign, and he decided to play closer at home for a year. But when we had the opportunity to grab him, we wanted to add that piece to him. And I think Pat had it good. He's a big, tough, strong defender who brings lots of grit, but does have a scoring touch. I think 2 years ago when he was in his last year with New England, he was definitely very close to winning Defender of the Year. I thought it was his best year ever. I thought he was great in the defensive end. I think he scored 12, 13 goals in that season. Arguably, I think some people were surprised that he didn't win. So, adding a guy like that to our roster with so much depth already just makes us a tougher group to play against.
We continue on. It is Colton Armstrong, a young player looking for a full-time roster spot with this team. Great kid. Pat, what can you tell me about Army?
Great kid, great story too. This is a guy that played junior C during his junior career, but you talk about a guy that wants to get better and better. Look no further than Colton Armstrong. He works so hard in the offseason. He is a sponge. Mike has used that term quite a bit, but he's always looking to get better, watching film, finding ways, talking to the veterans, learning the tricks of the trade. But he is just so gifted athletically. And although he hasn't played at those top levels, because he watches so much film and he wants to get better, he has a very good high lacrosse IQ. I think it's just putting it all together on a consistent rate. There's no reason why, he can't be a defender that's relied upon even more here. But I think he's also a guy that realized, look, that some of these other guys that were brought in to this team, he knows his spot is not given. But any challenge that has been put in front of Colton Armstrong, not only has he accepted the challenge, he's conquered it and conquered it with great strides. And I think he's going to take this as another challenge here in camp.
One of the Burrow boys, he gets the chance to learn from a good friend of his, Jake Withers. Mike, what's it like watching the two of them kind of interact?
Yeah, I think Jake has played at that elite level, all the way along, and Colton hasn't. But like I said before, he is a sponge, and he wants to get better, and he's willing to put the time and effort in, to make that next step. So, I expect big things out of him. I know one thing that Coach Billy was getting after him last year is finding that little bit of grit. Finding that intensity level where you just have to notch it up that little bit extra. Play a little grittier, play a little tougher. Physically, he can play the game. There's no doubt about it. He's super fast. He's a gifted athlete. It's putting all of those pieces together for him that I think is going to be important if he wants to play a game in and game out.
And finally, last but not least, on this right side of Team Purple defense, we have James Barkley, who's a teammate of Ryan Tarafenko's in the Premier Lacrosse League. These two look great together for the PLL Chrome. Pat, you watched quite a bit of the PLL season. What did you see from James, and what do you expect from him in the box lacrosse arena this season?
Well, not to go back to Tarafenko, but I have to because you did mention it. Whenever these guys were on the two-man side together in the field game, they looked like they had some great chemistry. So obviously Tarafenko learning from his future teammate in Barkley. And Barkley is a guy that, I think he's a guy that kind of goes underappreciated on this roster surrounding the rest of the league, I should say. I know everyone on this coaching staff, management staff, and of course on the team realize how young and special of a defender he is, but he doesn't get the praise that some of these other younger players in the league get. I love his grit. I love his determination. He's a very calm, cool, collected presence on the floor. And I think he just needs to take it to the next level if he wants to be more than just one of those depth defender pieces and a guy that can, be a cornerstone piece going forward for this organization.
Mike, what are you hoping to see from James this coming season?
Again, I think, for me, I'd like to, him continue to improve. Defensively, I think he's great. But again, it's making those decisions on the fly and making smart decisions and communicating. Again, those are things that I think he needs to continue to improve on. But again, you're looking at, the captain of the Mimico Mountaineers, again, an organization that's known for their grit and their sandpaper defenders. And he is definitely exemplifies that. I mean, he's a tough kid, plays physical. Again, we just want him to play a little bit smarter. So for me, I think he's continuing to evolve as a player and, looking for great things from Barks this year.
Okay, and we move on. Let's open this new pack of lacrosse cards. We've got Luke Magnan, Jake Withers, Brad Gillis, and Keaton Thompson. We see some more, I don't know, I think speed is what Cody Jamieson seems to be going here with Team Orange. He's going to be getting those possessions with Jake Withers on the draw. You got Luke Magnan on the back end to add some leadership and some toughness, but this is going to make things quite interesting. Let's start with Mags there, a player who has kind of stepped into more of a leadership role as the years have kind of progressed here and become more of a voice of this organization. Pat, what can you tell me about him?
I spent a lot of time with Luke Magnan this past summer, coaching the Toronto Beaches in the Futures division as well. And this is a guy that you want to talk about lacrosse IQ. This is him. And you mentioned the leadership. You could see it when he's coaching. You'd see it when he's a teammate, when he's on the floor, when he's on the bench. This is the epitome of a leader and a thinker, a cerebral player. And I think that's what he really knows what to do within his game. You mentioned speed. Definitely not his strongest asset, but he plays within himself. He's a great one-on-one defender, even though he does not have the speed as some of the other players on the floor, but he puts himself in the right position. He blocks shots. It seemed like the NLL doesn't track block shots, but he had to have led the team in block shots last season, and he's a character guy. Like I said, I spent a lot of time with him. This guy here is ready to compete. He believes that this is a championship contending team. And I think if this team's going to go all the way, he's going to play a big role, not just on the floor, but in the locker room as well.
Okay, yeah, I said speed. I was talking more of Jake Withers and Brad Gillis and Keaton Thompson, but Luke Magnan does bring that maybe a little bit more toughness to the back end that Graeme Hossack was looking to address with his defensive core there. So, Mike, you've seen Mags kind of develop as a player. As a man in the locker room. What can you tell me about him? What do you hope to see from him in the 2021-22 season?
Again, I think for him, it's just a continuation of where he left off. He is, again, I think the most unheralded defensive player in this league. Guys don't talk about him because you got big names like, Hossack and Corbeil and those guys, but he is an amazing defender. He's a tremendous communicator. He helps all the young guys. He's a great leader in the locker room and a great leader on the floor. So for me, it's just to continue that leadership role. I know what he can do, and I'm looking for him to just continue to be a cornerstone of that right side.
Let's move down the list. We've got, and again, no particular order here, but we've got Jake Withers and Cody Jamieson pretty high on Wiz. He said they're going to be winning that opening draw for sure. So if anyone's betting on this game, you can take that to the bank. He's quite confident. Wiz is such a big part of this team, signing a 5-year deal in the offseason heading into this year. It just speaks to Kurt Steyer's belief that he is such a big part of this organization. Pat, what do you hope to see from Wiz this season?
I hope to see Wiz just do Wiz things, and that's more than just dominating face-offs and winning loose balls. I truly believe that Jake Withers is one of the most underrated defenders in the National Lacrosse League. I think he is an elite defender. If you talk to the coaching staff, he's one of the guys that you want on their top players. He's feisty. He's always communicating on the floor. He's a great leader, and he's a guy that continues to get better and better in all facets of the game. Everyone knows how good of a face-off guy he is. I just truly don't think people realize how good of a defender he is, and I think he is an elite defender, and I think he's going to prove it this year because he's hungry to prove that he's not just the best face-off man in the game.
Okay, maybe we want to keep it quiet. We don't want to, tip our hats to other teams out there and let them in on the fact that he is such an elite defender. I think they know. Mike, what can you tell me about Wiz? Is there something that you might be looking from him for this season?
Again, he's a young guy, but again, a great leader. He really is one of those guys that I'm going to look to for that, continued leadership. But I think Wiz is a special player. I think that, obviously he's great at faceoffs. We all know that. But I really, truly feel that a few years ago when we drafted him, a lot of guys were questioning that decision. And, we put a lot of time and effort into our drafts, and especially that. And that was a money ball decision. I mean, he's getting us the ball 60% of the time. So he can stop runs, single-handedly as a player. And that's really hard to do. And you're seeing other teams starting to realize, I call it the Wiz factor, you got Toronto signing Erlin. You got other teams going after faceoff guys and seeing if they can turn them into defenders. I don't have to worry about that. Wiz is a tremendous faceoff guy, but I truly believe he's one of the best defenders. And my bet is that he'll win Defender of the Year at some point in his career, because I do feel that he's that good of a defender.
Yeah, extremely exciting to watch. It's fun to interact with Wiz. I remember a couple of years, Pat, I mean, you can attest to this, going down to Rochester, and Wiz was one of the guys we really connected with. He was really easy to talk to, and you see the impact that he has on the floor, scoring the first goal for this organization here in Halifax. But he's just such a big part of this team. So big expectations from Jake Withers coming this season. Let's move on. Brad Gillis. I was talking about that speed, and I don't know if there are many players on this roster that kind of exemplify that more. Just a speed demon. And he's so great in transition, can really push that ball up the floor, a leader as well. Pat, what are you hoping to see from Brad Gillis this season?
I'm hoping to see maybe just a little more production than we saw last season. And it wasn't for a lack of chances. It just seemed like he was snake bitten, especially near the start of the season. Had 5 points, which as a defender, you'll definitely take. But he's a guy that has some great offensive touch. And it just helps out the offense so much when your defense can score a couple of goals in transition. I think Brad Gillis is that type of guy. And he's a guy, when he does start scoring, that's when the confidence gets rolling. And I think we're going to see, I don't want to call it a bounce back season, because I definitely think he still did have a very solid season last year in Halifax, but I think he's going to have an even better season, contributing a little bit more in offense. And when he does play 5-on-5D, he's great. Picks off passes, picks up loose balls really well. And of course, I've said it enough. He's great in transition, moving the ball up the floor. And when he gets those scoring opportunities, especially his patented bounce shot down low, it's perfect. I think we're going to see some more offense from Gillies this year.
We saw Graeme Hossack kind of pick up on that a little bit too and took it as his own. But Mike, from Brad, is there any expectations that you have from him heading into this coming season?
I agree with Pat. I think, when you look at teams, all teams' offenses are really good. They can all score. Most teams' defenses are really good, and they're going to stop. The X factor becomes those guys in the middle, those transition guys. You can out-transition, score a team. You're probably going to win that game. So for me, he's one of those X factor guys that I think is really good defender, but I really want to see him jump into that offense, push that ball, make smart decisions in transition, and score some goals. I expect 8 to 10 goals out of him this year. And I think he's done that in the past. So I don't think that's without reason that he's going to become that X factor guy for us, along with guys like Tyson Bell.
Now, finally, on the back end for Team Orange defense, righties, we've got Keaton Thompson, and he played his junior career with the Mimico Mountaineers. Pat, you got a great chance to see him. Mike, I would imagine some scouting came. And what do you expect from Keaton in order to make a push to make this opening night roster? Mike, we'll start with you.
I think it's a compete level. I mean, he's a great athlete. Again, a guy I think that really hasn't been given his due. Again, smart in transition, plays good tough defense. Our defensive squad is going to be a tough team to make. So I think he has to go out there and outwork guys that maybe feel a little bit too comfortable with their position and know that, he's going to push for either a spot on our roster or a spot on our practice roster. Every year we've got 4 guys that are on our practice roster that at any given time is going to get tapped on the back and said, you need to step in this weekend and play. Especially with COVID and COVID protocols, those guys have to be ready to play. And I think Keaton's one of those guys that's going to push all of our veterans and is going to push for one of those spots on our team.
Pat, you are a junior lacrosse connoisseur. You know it all. So what can you tell me about Keaton Thompson?
I thought Mike nailed it on the head. Very athletic. He's a guy that I think has an edge to his game. He's a Mimico Mountaineer, so he does have that grit to him as all the defenders that we've seen coming from the Devil Blue. But he's a very smart player as well. And I think he's the type of player that knows that, in his junior career, he'd average about 10, 12 points a season. He knows when he comes to the National Lacrosse League level, he's not going to have to do that. Yes, he's going to have to chip in when the opportunities come, but what he needs to do is be that depth piece, push guys in the lineup, play with that edge, be physical, be athletic. And I think he's the type of player that knows how to play those different type of roles. And I think he's a perfect guy to invite out here to camp. And I think he's going to surprise some people because he wasn't maybe the highest on a lot of people's draft boards. But he's a guy that, from what I've seen in small sample sizes over the last couple of years, he's a guy that I think can play at this level.
Last but certainly not least, the goaltenders. And this is interesting. We've got 3 goaltenders here. Warren Hill needs to see some shots. So, Mike, you've made the decision to put him in for the entirety of the game. So he's going to start on Team Orange, and then in the second half, make his way to Team Purple. I don't know what side he would rather be on, but maybe we'll find out from him on the Purple versus Orange night. Now, Pete Dubinsky, that is, he's going to be suiting up for Team Orange, and he will play, I guess, the second half. And Chase Martin will be suiting up the first half, for Team Purple and Graeme Hossack. So, Pat, I'll let you speak about Chase Martin a little bit. What can you tell me about this netminder? And then, Mike, we'll go to you and Pete Dubinsky, as we know quite a bit about Warren Hill.
Yeah, Chase Martin's a guy that I think he has had the opportunities, maybe not a ton of opportunity, but whenever he has it at other levels, he has flourished. He was an elite goaltender at the senior B level, a solid junior career, mostly in junior B, but, just has kind of run into some teams where they have top echelon goaltending. And I think he's a guy that, if you have him on your practice roster, he's a great guy to have in the room, but he is a guy that if there is some injuries, he can step in as a backup, and he's going to try to step up and try to be a guy that just is there to make saves. And I think he's just happy to have the opportunity to play in front of an electrifying crowd here, and who knows, maybe he'll impress here and push for that backup spot with Pete Dubinsky.
Quite the big body. Mike Pete Davinsky, spending some time in the WLA, playing for the Victoria Shamrocks, looked pretty solid there. And when he was called upon for the Halifax Thunderbirds, I think he did quite all right. What are you hoping to see from him in the purple versus orange game and then in this coming season?
I think Pete played really well for us last year. He came in a few games when we were struggling and relieved Warren. And, you know, in that SAS game, which was in Halifax, you know, he was the guy that stepped in when we were down 12-2 and really helped light a fire for our team. So, again, a guy that can come off the bench. He's a solid goaltender, can throw the ball, plays his angles really well. Super fast goalie, a great reaction type of goalie, which is completely different than a Warren Hill. So it's nice having that mix of different goalies. It does affect a shooter when, you know, they see all this net where they don't see it with Warren. They're shooting on Pete, and he's so fast to get in there that he can get there in time. So it's nice to have that different combination of goaltenders. So for me, Pete, I want him to continue to work hard, you know, fight for playing time. And again, you know, Warren really stepped up last year and became our number one guy, and was really our cornerstone of our defensive unit. But, you know, Doobie, whenever he was called upon, was real steady for us and real good for us. So, you know, again, looking for that consistency.
Gentlemen, can Warren Hill return to that same form? Are we going to see the King of the Hill back in action this season in the Nest?
I can't see why not, Tyson. And it seems there's chatter around some of the media in the league that the big question mark around this team is, you know, can Warren Hill duplicate what he did? Can he bring back that magic that we saw down in the Nest? Well, he certainly can, because it's not just last year that's this flash in the pan season. If you go to the season before that, when he took over the starting role, his numbers were tremendous. And this is a guy that has had an opportunity and he has run with it. And I don't need to be preaching to the choir here, because quite frankly, as soon as the Halifax Thunderbirds arrived with that purple and orange game last time and with the first game, and as it progressed, he became an absolute fan favorite. And it was because of those crazy saves he would make. And it was because maybe when the defense wasn't playing great, he would pick the team up with a big save, a great pass, a great outlift feed to someone streaking down the floor. He was a real jolt of energy in the building whenever the team needed it. And he's just such a happy-go-lucky, fun guy to have around the room. You know, at the end of the game, running around, giving the salute, biggest smile on the face. It just makes you so happy. He's a guy that just loves to play the game, loves to make those big saves, especially in the big games as well.
Well, let's take a final look at these two rosters. And we had the chance to hear from both Graeme and Cody a little bit earlier in the day. And let's start with Team Purple and what Graeme had to say about his back end.
I realized partway through I was kind of building my defense a little bit on size. We're pretty big back there, and hopefully we can bully them a little bit. So hopefully we're nice physical on the back end. I picked up a couple young guys there. I wanted to see how they play with a little bit of guidance there. So we have a bunch of veteran guys and then a couple young guys that we can work in there, and hopefully we can give them some advice and be able to work them in and have them be successful. Obviously with a little bit of coaching, obviously Tarafenko not playing a ton of box, but getting him in there, working on that stuff. Same with the Riggs, just being a young guy, see how he works with some of our veteran guys in there. And obviously we have some size back there, which is going to be a lot of fun.
Okay, so Graeme talking a lot about how he wanted that physicality. He wanted that sandpaper. I think, Pat, you mentioned that a little bit earlier. And you go to Cody's team and you see a little bit more speed. He had a bit of a different strategy. Let's hear from Cody on what he looked to address on the back end.
Yeah, I think we got a really solid crew in the back end. I think, we got a mix of young and old with Luke Magnum and Brad Gillis, being our old guys. I'll quote unquote that. And we got some young fast guys. I think our transition game is really going to go well. I think we're the faster team, so I think we push transition really well. Our offense flying out the door, and our D guys making the right move and either burying it or passing it to the old guys and burying it. holding the fort down when that calls.
Okay, again, he says speed. He wants to push that ball in transition, get it up the floor, score some goals. Do the two of you have maybe a preference as to which defensive squad to go with here? Who's got the edge? Pat, let's start with you.
Oh, I don't know. I don't know if I can pick. Both these teams very strong. I like the blend, how both. Well, I know Graham said he went a little more, physical, bigger bodies. Jammer went a little more speed and transition. But when you look at both rosters, they did a pretty good job balancing out the veterans and the youngsters as well. So I look really to see some of those veterans, like you mentioned, Soupy, or on the other side with Hossack. I think these guys are going to do a good job making these other young defenders comfortable. So I don't know if one team has an edge or not. Maybe I'm just trying to play safe with both these captains here, but I think both defense are pretty tough. And that's just a testament to the depth this organization has out the back end.
Mike, your thoughts?
He didn't even answer the question. All he did was talk around it. But, I think, I think Hossack surprised Cody with a few of the picks and kind of threw him off of his kind of draft list. So I would give the edge to Haas's team. I think the size and grittiness that they have. As a righty guy that played in the league for a long time, I would not want to be going against the lefties on Hossack's team. That's for sure. Big, tough, gritty defenders. They're just going to punish guys. So yes, I give the edge in transition to Cody. But remember, you gotta play defense first before you can jump in transition. So I'm giving the edge to Haas for sure.
Well, Haas did mention the fact that while these players are on the same team, they're going to be going hard in this purple versus orange game. And the three of us are extremely excited. Be sure to get your free tickets now at halifaxthunderbirds.com. All the information is there. Join us on October 30th because this game, well, we've still yet to find out what the wager is going to be between Jamison and Hossack, but it should be a good one. Stay tuned for that. And tomorrow, tune in at 6 p.m. Eastern, 7:30 p.m. Atlantic, as we will draft the forwards for Team Purple and Orange. Pat Gregoire, Mike Accursi, thanks for joining me tonight. It's been a lot of fun.